Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, "There was a rich man, and he had a steward who was denounced to him for being wasteful with his property. He called for the man and said, 'What is this I hear about you? Draw me up an account of your stewardship, because you are not to be my steward any longer.' Then the steward said to himself, 'Now that my master is taking the stewardship from me, what am I to do? Dick, I'm not strong enough to go begging. I should be too ashamed. Yes, I know what I will do, to make sure that when I am dismissed from office, there will be someone to welcome me into their homes.' And then he called his master's debtors one by one. To the first he said, 'How much do you owe my master?' 100 measures of oil,' was the reply. The steward said, 'Here, take your bond. Sit down straightway and write 50. To another he said, 'And you, sir, how much do you owe?' 100 measures of wheat,' was the reply. The steward said, 'Here, take your bond and write 80. The master praised the dishonest steward for his astuteness. For the children of this world are more astute in dealing with their own kind than the children of light. And so I tell you this, use money, tainted as it is, to win your friends, and thus make sure that when it fails you, they will welcome you into the tents of eternity. The man who can be trusted with little things can be trusted in great. The man who is dishonest in little things will be dishonest in great. If then you cannot be trusted with money, that tainted thing, who will trust you with genuine riches? And if you cannot be trusted with what is not yours, who will give you what is your very own? No servant can be the slave of two masters. He will either hate the first or love the second, or treat the first with respect and the second with scorn. You cannot be the slave both of God and of money." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Good morning, everyone. The days, the weeks are drawing us closer to a very important theme that has been unfolding the past weeks. It's all on discipleship. If you take a moment, just a moment and a glimpse to look back at the past readings and reflections, Jesus has been speaking in depth on the whole experience of a disciple. Just to recollect and recap some of the key words that he was speaking about: taking up the cross, leaving father and mother, the narrow gate, love of God, love of neighbor. What is it to inherit this mystery? This whole experience that Jesus has been dwelling so deeply the couple past weeks is to help the listeners, the audience, most importantly, amidst the crowds. He was trying to single out all those whom he could call as disciples. And the readings the past week, as well as the readings today, is narrowed down to simply what it is to enter into the discipleship, but most importantly into the mysteries of the kingdom. One of the things that Jesus did was to teach. As I've said before, he's on this road to Jerusalem. And along this road to Jerusalem, he's teaching. He's trying to promote, as you'd say, the mystery of this kingdom. And one of the ways that he did it very tastefully was to speak in parables. Parables are simple short stories with metaphors and images and symbols. But there's always a line in the parable that captures the very essence of what the story is all about. Today's story is about the dishonest manager. It's a parable that many of us, a good number of us, will be able to capture in the life of today's world. As I said to you, Jesus would use images and metaphors of people who was able to attune to it. So he spoke about stewardship, because many of them were slaves, were stewards. Some of them were holding high positions as managers of lands, masters of the land. And so he said, there was a steward who was given the position and the responsibility to manage the business dealings of the master. And so the master traveled away. In the midst of this time, the steward took advantage of his position, likewise of his responsibility. He began to do a lot of side dealings. And the books were not right. And all of a sudden, the master turned up to look at the books. And the master said to the servant, I would like to have a look at the books. Please prepare an account of the dealings that you did. And this caught the servant, the steward, off guard. He knew his days was about to be numbered. He knew that he was going to be dismissed from his position. So what he did was very simple. He called all those who were in the book, the debtors, and he asked the first one, how much did you owe the master? He says, 100 jugs of oil. Don't worry, put 50. Just keep it at 50. Then he called the second fellow, how much do you owe the master? And that guy said, about 80 packs of wheat. Don't worry, just put 40. All he was doing was, you help me, I help you. You see this, my dear friends, in the political scenes, in the economic scenes today. It's far-fetched in the open today. How people in office, in public office, how people in positions takes advantage of their responsibility for their own good. For the selfish need, maybe you could say. For their personal gain. And this is what we call today an abuse of office, an abuse of authority. It happens. It's just unfolding and unfolding and unfolding the past couple of weeks and months. And every one of us are getting a glimpse of it, of all those who have taken advantage. Because the whole experience is, let me think about myself, what I would gain from these positions. And that's what Jesus says, the dishonest manager who took advantage of him. As I said to you in the beginning just now, in every parable, you have to find the key to unlock the secret of a parable. And I've said this many times, it is in the last line of a parable. It's always on the last line of a parable you will capture the story of the parable. Last week, what was the last line of the parable? It was the parable of the prodigal son, the lost son. Can you remember the last line of the parable? He who was lost is found. He who is dead is alive. The one who was lost is dead. Is found. The one who is dead is alive. What's the last line of today's parable? I brought it nearer for you. What was the last line of today's parable? You cannot serve two masters. You cannot serve two masters. That was the last line of today's parable. You cannot. You would either love one or hate the other. You would either treat one with love and the other with scorn. For you cannot serve two masters. The question we asked, in all honesty, in all sincerity today is, where is your heart today? Because Scripture tells us where your heart is, there is your treasure. What is it that drives you? What is it that gives a purpose and a meaning to you all day long, every moment of your life? What is it that possesses you to move on in each moment with given breath of life? What is it that stirs us on and on? The danger with this dishonest manager was only one word I could capture. It was simply greed. Just sheer greed. And you find this in the first reading from the book of the prophet Amos. Amos was hard with his words. And he told the people, especially the rich and those in position, why do you trample the poor? Why do you take advantage of those? Why do you keep changing the scales every given moment just for your selfish needs? Why do you do that? Moses was he didn't mince his word, and he just threw it out in the open to them. Because Moses is what we call today a prophet of justice and equality and freedom. And Amos just spoke out to the people who were in positions. But I like the way St. Paul, in his letter to Timothy today, St. Paul says, just do one thing. Pray for them. Pray for them, intercede for them, that they may be enlightened in their positions, in their power, that they may not draw themselves into greed, into selfish needs. That's the danger. Because the key word in contrast, in the opposite of greed, is faithfulness. Because Jesus tells the disciples, if I can trust you with little things, I will trust you with greater things. If I cannot trust you with little things which is not your own, how can I trust you with bigger things which is not even your own? It's about the faithfulness to the little things. To the little things that God has given us. That's the whole question today. God has entrusted us and God has blessed us with so much. And to some of us, we find it's not enough. We look for more. We look for more. We crave, we thirst, we hunger for many things in life. And it doesn't matter if we have to trample and step on others for our selfish needs. You know, this last 5 days, I was in a retreat, and I shared this to some people, some close friends. I was in a retreat, and the focus on the retreat was on the word sin. On the very word sin. And the retreat master, in expounding this whole teaching on sin, he said that sin is about 3 letters. S, I, N. And what's the center of it? That's it, he says. Every sin will start with I. When you look into yourself and says, what is it for me? You will fall into sin. When the I becomes the important person in any relationship, it falls into sin. When I is always in control of something, it becomes a sin. That dishonor manager today just looked at himself, the I. And he said, what is it for me at the end of the day? What is it for me when I am dismissed from my office? I have to prepare myself for that I. And he fell into the trap. And it got me thinking for the longest time during this past few days, for the many times that I may have fallen into sin. And I realized it was always about the selfish, self-centeredness, self-egoistic life that I was looking for. And it all begins with that I. Faithfulness is always rewarded to the end. The invitation today is that very simple. At the end of the day, heaven awaits us. That's the end of the destination of the disciples, that eternal home. Good and faithful servant, take hold of what is given to you. Good and faithful steward, here is the reward that was been entrusted to you. The core message of today is simple this: if I can trust you with little things, greater things will I give you. If I cannot trust you with the little things that has been given to you, even what is yours will be taken away. You cannot serve 2 masters. You either love one or hate the other. You will treat one with love and the other with scorn. And it all begins with that simple word, I. Let us ask the Lord the grace today that we may deepen our love for the greater home that awaits us.